I've been asked a lot about the sentiments and the thoughts surrounding this day. Basic premise is this: change your words and change your world. In the most interesting way, it launches dozens of very personal conversations about how our words shape our thoughts and our feelings. I don't give you affirmations to repeat like some ritual that's going to make your life better. You will get better first by your words. The words we use, the words we believe to be true, to do this and not that, to say these things, to parrot these things that others told us to do. So much so that most of us have not read Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. Most Christians haven't even read the Bible. Most Americans have not even read the Constitution. We don't even read the instruction manuals or privacy statements to our online social media. Hell, most of us sing the words to songs that we love, but we never know the lyrics. And then we're shocked when we actually find out what those lyrics are really saying or what the song is really about. Some of us want to change and just have a breakthrough to the next level of performance or spirituality or some kind of enlightenment somehow. It's only through the words of discovery of these stories and these essays that this day somehow unlocks things with its readers.
Watching Rosemary.
Best Book Bits brings you Philip Gabbard, a philosophical creative writer, thinker, creative director, and ad man entrepreneur, author of 2 published books, THISday and Thrivation, a media sales trainer, podcaster, and advertising agency owner. Philip is credited for writing and producing thousands of national radio and TV commercials in the last 30 years. Philip, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's a real honor.
No worries. Now, for my audience who don't know Phil, tell me a little bit about yourself and your younger days as well.
You know, I think I'll start with kind of the everyman approach, something of which I write about, and it's a point of view that I can honestly says comes from the heart, because an everyman is the commoner, if you will, and perhaps that's how I saw myself living a pretty common life, perhaps, and until my early teens and 20s, life was brilliant. I didn't have much money, didn't come from money. My father was a farmer, my mom a homemaker. I was the youngest of 6 kids, so always had clothes. They were always hand-me-downs, and always had food on the table. And life was interesting. And it wasn't until maybe late teens that I realized that there was a difference between the haves and the have-nots, where we lived and where some of the other people lived. And I kind of felt like I spoke from that point of view of hey, we all have these certain commonalities. So my life growing up was special. It was exquisite. It was not filled with drama or any issues, that sometimes we commonly identify with problems in later years. So I look at how my life pathed forward, and I feel honored, full of gratitude with the parents that I had. And I think, Michael, that's a strong, impression of my base values. It's not that my parents taught me these lessons. They created an environment where these lessons were just learned. I didn't need to be told often many things other than this was how it goes, and this is what we have to do to, make our way through school and friendship and issues and so forth. But that was a whole lifetime ago. And I think today people are faced with many, many different challenges that came to me later in life.
Yeah. So you grew up on a farm with 5 brothers and sisters, and whereabouts was the farm?
I was born in Indiana, and as a very young guy, my parents moved me to Arizona, and that's where I did most of my formative years from the age of 5 to 18 before I went on to university.
And what university did you go to?
I was an athlete in high school, and I earned a Division I scholarship to play football for the University of Texas at El Paso. And that experience, corralled all of my hopes and dreams into uh, one of the more special experiences that any young person could have. It was in a very um, highly acclaimed university for a lot of reasons, especially not football. And during my 5 years uh, with the university, our football team went from probably one of the worst athletic programs in the nation to one of the top 20 programs in the nation. So I had a very, very unbelievable experience in college that helped prop me up to have a jump off for my career, which after playing football and playing in a lot of really exciting matches with teams that were, at least in the 80s, marquee teams. I was able to, take those lessons and apply them to work and relationships and so forth. But early on in my career, I kind of learned that there was kind of a game being played where if you said certain things or did certain things, you got certain favors. And I stayed in the same industry. I've been in the same industry for, which is advertising and marketing for 30 years, Michael. And I, as I grew, I just started realizing that, there are upsets and letdowns and untruths and things in this world that probably need some honesty and some attention and some leadership from an everyday guy who's been in every kind of hustle you can imagine, but somebody who needed to, you know, it wasn't a book that I needed to write, Michael. It was the way that I behaved, kind of maybe is what I wanted to do with my children, is not tell them how to do it, but show them how to do it.
Yeah.
Later in life, though, and up until the time I wrote both of these books within the last 2.5 years, I just realized that I needed to do more. It was I was obligated to say something,
Yeah.
and um, I don't know, I was spiritually awakened. A lot of things happened, including a tremendous downfall in my life. And I think all of these things, Michael, you're asking great questions. I'm doing most of the talking because it's a culmination of our life's experiences that give us the impetus to do certain things in our lives that are profound. And
Yeah.
I wanted to do something profound, even though I'm a regular guy like you or any other person on this planet.
Sorry to cut you off, but we'll definitely come back to the books. But I want to give people an understanding of sort of where you've come from in your journey so far, because you have lived an amazing life. I mean, I think I read in your bio you're 310 pound, college footballer, and then studying journalism, and then realizing how much journalists made, which wasn't a lot of money. You quickly switched to sales and marketing. So I want you to talk a little bit about that transition and college, and then we'll get into your progression with your 30-year career, and then we'll deep dive into your books. Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously, I wasn't a strong math kid, so I did like writing, and there was a creative aspect to it. So that felt natural to me. Off into the radio and TV advertising business because I felt comfortable in being able to write a message, a letter, and ultimately commercials, which is its own skill set. And from there, I realized that even though I didn't pursue the journalist side of the business or the copywriting necessarily, I did get into the sales and marketing, and having that ability to, administer with customers and clients and prospects the idea of, hey, I have an idea and I can articulate it in a 30 or 60-second ad, was an ingredient to make money. And I succeeded. And I honestly, year over year for 20 years, 30 years, grew my business immensely until a point where I started my own company and continued that success run for years. So I loved how they dovetailed, and I didn't have an aspiration to write a book out of all of this, Michael, but the certain steps led to a downfall, and that's kind of what tipped me up to feeling like I needed to say something more.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. And you've been working with the Hispanic community for the last 30 years. So how did that start and what's your relationship like with that? I know you've won numerous awards, Sid, with the Hispanic community as well.
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I've valued uh, kind of the cultural differences in the marketplace. I grew, my profession in El Paso, and then moved on to Los Angeles. And the Hispanic communities in those marketplaces are enormous. And as a marketer, being a gringo in the space and having the knowledge and know-how to, communicate with Latinos in a language of preference, I was able to give my customers who most likely had struggled in that space some guidance to navigate that space successfully. And that's what I kind of, that was a niche area that I specialized in. And so I wasn't a master to all of these other aspects of marketing. I really subserved, um, a marketer who wanted to have better success in the Hispanic space across the US. And there's where I found gold.
Yeah. And what's some of the creative lessons that you've learned sort of over the last 30 years writing television, radio commercials? I know one of your things you said you become a professional bullshit talker. But so what are some of the lessons that the regular folk can learn from radio and TV commercials?
There's a couple things. One, it doesn't all fit into 30 or 60 seconds, so don't try. The second thing is really is rescripting, and this kind of dovetails with how I write. I'm a different writer. I I write in a style that is 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 really not common anymore, and I don't know if I know how to write any other way. But one of the things I will say, we have an opportunity to re-script our words all the time. And one of the pitfalls for a marketer is try to communicate, try to convey a message in English, and then they have a desire to want to say all of that same language just translated into Spanish. And there's a big delta. There's a big disconnect when doing that. And it is a major, major common pitfall. Almost every advertiser I've ever experienced with tried to translate from English to Spanish. And truly, you need to re-script your messaging to be, originated in a more authentic way in the words that are most important for maybe a meaning you're trying to convey, but you can't translate the words. It's just impossible. And we see it when it happens, and it's for the audience, it's a disconnect. And so inside of that, Michael, is a lesson when we try to communicate with one another. We try to use common, maybe conformed words that are, you know, overused or improperly applied in certain situations. And sometimes it creates a disconnect in relationships, whether that's with your children or your spouse or your parents or your employer. There's just times that we use worn out, unoriginal, not well thought out words. And in writing commercials specifically, I always get the words right. I always get to script my words for maximum effect. And that's what I try to do in the books that I've written, in a way that I can say some things differently to do one thing. I just want you to think, Michael. That's all I'm asking people to do.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on your book in a sec. It's one of the most interesting written books that I've read in terms of the thoughtfulness and the openness and the honesty and the radical transparency that you come across. So I'll definitely jump into that in a sec. But I just want to quickly segue to a funny little thing. How did you start with your obsession with tequila?
I guess I'd have to say after failing with every other liquor, no. I think a better way to say that is that um, I became a tequila aficionado, if you will, um, just because of following other people's passions. Um, that there was something there that was magic. So I like the taste. I like the tasting of. I like the experience. I like the friendships that have been cultivated from having a passion about anything. I don't care if you like bicycles or a football team or what have you. When you find common interest, I just enjoy talking about that. And I've really enjoyed, obviously, the Mexican culture. I love touring Mexico. I love the Mexican people, and they've been very inviting to me. My wife is from Mexico. My extended family is all from Mexico. Most of them still live in Mexico. So it has gone hand in glove. And um, if I have my if I have my way, I will have a tequila sometime in the future of my own name.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. Now, so we come full circle. You're born and raised farm, family, great upbringing, gone to university, studied journalism, gone into sales and marketing. Tell me about the downfall and tell me about the journey of writing your first book, This Day, and how it came about.
Um, I think it was a culmination of things. I had a business downfall, a big one, but that was enough to give me enough fear in my life to act very, very concerned. But the fear affected me in a way that I just couldn't, I wasn't handling properly. Um, I prided myself as being a provider, and there's an arrogance in that, an inauthenticity that I wanted to look good to others and avoid at all costs looking bad. At the same time, I was having an issue with my son, college age, who was going through his own troubles, and nothing terrible, Michael, but it made me realize that I could show up as anybody, any day, just with how I felt about myself, how I thought about myself, and specifically the words that I used to do all of those things. And I kind of formulated a theory that everything is based off of our words. Our words are what form our thoughts. Our words are what form our feelings. And if you get the words right, you get the right thoughts and the right feelings. And if you get them wrong, disaster. So, in a breakdown with my son, I just wrote a letter to him. I we weren't communicating. It was over text messaging, and I just felt like, I was trying to be the cool dad, and I didn't do enough to talk to him in a way that he would get. And so I could have said anything. I could have yelled at him. I could have sent him money and got him out of his situation. But instead, I wrote a letter, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and it made me just think of more things that I needed to say and write. That was the catalyst to this day, and it just launched me into this really cathartic experience of writing, which helps me think. Like I said, I get to rescript the words. I get all of these jumbled up feelings and emotions of my own downfall um, organized in a way that I say yes. That that helps get me on track. You know, and I knew I could come back out of my own downfall. I just didn't want to ruin everybody, who depended on me at the same time. So I had to communicate, and I did it through writing.
Yeah, so I agree, and I think one of the things that touched me was that I've been writing for the last sort of 14 years myself, and I at least write 1 or 2 pages a day in my journal, and I write about this day. So I'm just going to read a little quote that I love from the book as well to give my audience some
Okay.
context about some of your writing. So one of the chapters you write about is called "Who Am I?" So we're a lot of things, aren't we? I'm a man, a father, or a son, I am poor. I am wealthy. I am a husband, a friend. I am old. And I am young. I am a memory for some and a future for others. I'm a face in the crowd or an old photo. Lost. I am a writer, a thinker, a creator, a client, a peddler, a mentor, an advisor. I am a cheerleader. I am a player. I am everything to some and nothing to most. This is this day. So for now, I am this day. I am just like you. I am reborn daily until my last. I am open and I am vulnerable because I am present. I choose this day because it's where the right here and right now can affect every action a human being is capable of. As there are no capable actions in this yesterday or this tomorrow, so I've decided this now that that is who I am. Shakespeare, Philip, what do you think of that?
Um, uh, as a writer, Michael, you'll know that sometimes words flow, and it gives me goosebumps hearing you read that because um, those are probably some of the most important words that I wrote with just sheer honesty that I'm nothing and I'm everything, and I'm nothing to most, and I'm everything to some. And when I decided that's who I am, that's how I get to show up every day, that I know that I have value and that I'm a life source for so many people. And I wanted to share that. I wanted people to crawl inside this conversation with me to see if we could behave in a way that humans should behave, that we care, that there's love and frailty and vulnerability, and that even though I was a big 310-pound offensive lineman and could fight with a lion, that I could also be hurt and fall and crumble, and that I needed help, I guess, and that I, as an everyman, we're all the same, bro. You
Yeah,
know, we
yeah,
all go through this stuff, and I needed to get my words organized, articulated, and most importantly, Michael, I needed to share them, and that's really what launched me into this whole journey as a writer.
yeah. And I know from personally speaking to yourself and understanding your story, and we've been connected for a little bit of time now. Tell me a little bit about sort of loss. I know you've experienced some loss and death, and you talk about that in your second book as well. So tell me some of the
Yeah,
experiences of late that you've had with death.
I didn't experience death, as a youngster. I part of this whole charmed life. I said, I didn't necessarily know we were poor until later, and I'd never had an experience with death until later in life. And then it catches up with you quickly. You love a lot of people, and a lot of loved ones leave your life, and whether that's a pet or something else. But yeah, I've had quite a journey in death and grief, from my parents to my young nephews. And right as I was ending Thrivation, Thrivation just poured out of me, man. I had something else to say. Didn't It wasn't planned. I just started writing, and Michael, I wrote another 100,000 words in 5 months and published another book. Um, but right at the end of that, I lost my nephew to suicide about 3 years ago. So my brother, who I love, just was torturous that he lost his oldest son. And 2 years later, um, his only son then was killed in a motorcycle accident. And it's just, how is this manageable? And so it's one of those things that I could only articulate in the way that I know how, is to tell the story of what lessons were gain from a death from somebody that the whole world didn't know, but those few of us that did, uh, what what's the lesson? What did they give to the rest of us that we can take forward and share with others? And so I, I memorialized it in a book. And I think that the way that I have written it and I communicated with my brother and the others that I have gone through these experiences of loss with, I communicated it in a way that says, this is how we honor people. This is what we've learned, and this is what I'm carrying forward with them. And I think it's a beautiful way to, talk about death. It's a very stoic belief of memento mori, um, uh, and amor fati. It happens. Um, it's coming, but we treat death as a taboo, and we treat death as something that needs to be so sterilized, where um, we can't talk about, you know, death in such a way that it's become problematic. So I found a lot of healthful reasons in doing so in my own kind of, how did I reconcile my father's death? How did I reconcile my nephew's death and my friends' deaths and so forth? And now that I'm of an age where I know more older people who naturally are dying, um, it's helped me, and I think for those people who read my words, it will help them immensely.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing and being so open as well with the audience. I know you made a super emotional post when your mother passed, and you sat
Yeah,
by her bedside and reflected and took some notes. What was some of the wisdom that she passed down for you? I know she was sort of Was she 90 when she passed?
she was,
Yeah,
and it was just another blessing of experience in my charm life. I got to be with my aged mother who got to die peacefully in her own bed, um, surrounded by loved ones. But I was able to um, talk with her. I'd When I wrote this day, I took the manuscript and had it bound, and I presented it to her, and she kept it with her every day. She kept her Bible, and she kept my book, and I was able to read a chapter at her bedside as she passed from this day, and um, which just warmed my heart about being thankful to our mother, all of our mothers, of what they put into our lives, and having that experience was wonderful. The Her death was glorious because it was a life well lived, um, and not everybody gets this experience, but we all can have the words and conversations. We can talk with our parents or our loved ones who have passed, even though we might not have had that chance to be at their bedside. We can talk with, I speak with my father almost daily. He died 7 years ago. Um, and those things are meaningful to me. So death is, it's not spooky and not scary, and it's not taboo. It's something that we can talk about. And I think we find helpfulness because it's going to get us all, you know. I wrote about my dad's death in Thrivation because it took me 6 years to understand it. And so I got to tell the story about his passing, and it was comical, and what a jubilation. But my simple dad wanted nothing more to donate his body to medical science. Um, and with his ashes, that after they were done with the medical portion of it, um, were used to plant a tree at the University of Arizona's medical center, you know, and that kind of tied in the whole Thrivation bit is that, you know, he gave of himself so much that, his ashes and his remains are what is going to grow a beautiful tree that will throw shade to somebody that will never know the sacrifice that was given for them to enjoy shade. And that's what Thrivation is. It's what we give, it's not what we get. And we all have been recipients of glory and these gifts from God in abundance. And, um, I really take that on straight on in Thrivation. There's a lot of people who take from this world because that's how the world appears to them, that for us to grow, we must consume. And I give a very full-throated argument that life should be about. Life should be about us growing by us giving to others and paying forward in ways that will benefit our descendants for tens, if not thousands of years into the future.
Yeah, and
And
I know just you talk about in the book the circle of life and death on a carousel, which is the circle of life you're talking about.
mhm, yeah, so I approach a lot of that in parabolic, you know, argument. Parables are short stories that we get. And so I use parable as a method to tell a lot of these stories that I just wanted my audience to understand that how we approach life is is an option.
Yeah.
I
And
choose to thrive.
what would be some of the advice that if we've got people in their 20s listening and watching this interview, what's some advice you would give them? Not necessarily yourself, but just 20-year-old kids. I call them kids because I'm in my 30s.
And then, pursue knowledge and understand things more than you know um, more than a quote. Read the whole damn book and then ponder those questions and read another book. Investigate it. Read the Bible. And Michael, if I'm not sure, um, uh, neither book is religious, and I actually you'll get an undertone of that in this day. I was very angry with God, um, but it came back to me sometime later that um, that this day is really a modern take of the book of Job, and there's no argument that I was influenced by the book of Ecclesiastes for Thrivation. Everything is turn, 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 is how I started the book off. Um, that is a very famous Beatles, a bird song um, that was scripture from the book of Ecclesiastes. But God provides everything, and it will all go away for the next person to enjoy. And so both of these books are biblical. And the only thing that I could say to a young person is study. Find things that are naturally curious to you and find the final answer because there's so much enjoyment in doing so. And life is, if we try to buzz around and get a little from this and a little from that, I don't think that it adds up to much. It adds up to a lot of little things.
Yeah.
I think the more you pursue knowledge and understanding, um, the betterment you will be for the world.
Yeah, perfect. And people of my age, in their 30s, I'm not going on 40, so I am mid 30s. But having a young family, getting married, what's some advice you would give 30-year-olds and early 40-year-olds as well, or
You
lessons that
know,
you've learned?
just to understand that we all go through changes. My mother and father were married for 65 years. They got married in their late teens, and they had to learn to live together as 20 somethings and 30 somethings with a house full of kids and 40 somethings with a house full of teenagers and 50 somethings as empty nesters and 60 somethings as aging and retiring and older people in their 70s and 80s. They had to change their relationship just to manage the changes in themselves. And I, that's what I aspire to. It would be false for me to give you any advice other than, man, I admired people who weathered the storms, good and bad. And it, it seems like there's too many options and opportunities for people who experience some trouble or some hard times and decide that they want to call it quits and move on. I think there's some glory and some joy to find in how to work through the tough. And that's that's how I'd like to respond to that, Michael.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Now I want to segue into some of your favorite authors and people who've had massive impact on your knowledge and your understanding. Like who have you read and who is your favorite authors in the past?
Well, in the past, I would have to say there was, key influencers was like Napoleon Hill, um, uh, Earl Nightingale. Um, these are old sales kind of structured pieces from, I don't know, written in the 1930s and so forth. I was really influenced by Steinbeck. Um, uh, I would have to say Hemingway for sure, and Charles Bukowski. Those were kind of these old, like I remember in high school and college, like toying around with those guys. Um, but I was always interested in, the poets. I loved, um, The Raven. I loved E. E. Cummings. I loved Shakespeare, even though I didn't quite understand it all. I had a great college professor, John West was his name, who just took line by line and made sure that we understood the bittersweet tongue by which Shakespeare tried to speak with, and his humor and all of those points that made him who he was for us all. But more modern authors, I've got to tell you, I've been devouring Jordan Peterson, and then there's a young man by the name of Dane Here that I really admire, who has written a book called Being You. And I get critical of a lot of books that I read or people ask me to read, and I'll say this about my own books: my book will find you when it's the right time. I think the right time is now. I hope everybody reads my books, but I know my books aren't for everyone. Um, I've had a whole shelf full of books that I collected over the years that I thumbed through again years later, and I go, when the hell was it in this book that attracted me to it? I always find a chapter or two of something cool and, 12 chapters full of shit. And, but they did add and contribute to my life. I don't want to disparage any of them or any of the acts that an author goes to sharing his words. But I do think my books are written in a way that once you find them, you won't remember them, but they will have an impact on your life. You don't need to remember them for all your life, but I do think they're important words that you need to hear. I hear feedback from other writers who have read my book, uh, who appreciate the honesty and
Yeah.
and instead of the divisiveness of trying to write the way that you think you should write. I think most people need to write and communicate and be heard from their heart and not from your head. It's poetry. I love music, and music is nothing but poetry put to words.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for the audience listening now, if you want a taste of this day, I have done a summary on it last year. So check out this day on Best Book Bits. But I'm going to put the links. Where can people buy your book from? Was it Amazon, or do you have a personal website you want to share? Where's the best
It,
place they can find your books?
most people can find it on Amazon worldwide. There's not a country that my books have not been shipped to. I've marketed a lot my books just to make sure that small readers and and, and so can have access to it. I have a website at authorphilipgabbard.com where you can also make those orders as well.
Yeah, perfect. Now, before we wrap up, I obviously don't want to take up too much of your time, but there's a UK TV show. I used to live in the UK and I've got family there called Come Dine With Me. And if you were to have a dinner party with three guests, they can be someone from the past or present that are famous, who would they be and what would you serve them?
I would have for sure in that group Benjamin Franklin. I think he's one of the most interesting men that ever lived. I would also have um, Teddy Roosevelt, one of the most interesting people that ever lived. I would have, I'd like to take my dad, but might not have been the famous guy.
No, that's fine.
But
That's fine. Yeah.
I would also like to have Jordan Peterson. That is a guy I would like to meet. What I would serve, it would have to be tacos and tequila, man.
Kill.
I don't think any of those guys would have ever had an opportunity to have a great taco and a well done tequila. And
Yep.
I can only imagine what that conversation would be like.
Yep.
These these are some of the most influential people of their time, and I admire each of them for their endeavors, their exuberance, their vulnerabilities, and what they left behind, or in Jordan's position, what he's leaving behind for future generations to enjoy.
Yeah, great. Now, I want to leave the audience with some words that you wrote at the end of the book this day. So, for the audience listening, Philip writes after the book, What to Do Next? Think, listen, talk, read, write, question, pursue, share, smile, love, breathe, hydrate, pray, meditate, sing, be, and thrive. What do you think about that, Phil?
I think those words will stand the test of time. Those
Absolutely.
are what else? What else is there?
Now,
Um,
I normally ask my guest, "What's the last message you want to leave?" But I actually just said it for you. So, um, where can people connect with you and find you online? Are you sort of most on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube? Where can people connect with you
I'm
personally?
mostly Instagram centric, and I'm available at author Philip Gabbard. I'm easy to find. You can find me through THISday or Thrivation. I will give myself a little bit of plug of what's coming next.
Oh, please,
A
please,
kid's
please.
book.
Yep.
A kid's book is going to be the next book out. It's called Know What I Know. I've got a masterful, cute as can be kids book with a very, very incredible illustrator by the name of Diego Robot, and you can find his artwork at Diego Robot on Instagram as well. And then I will have a third book in 2023, and I've already begun work on that. Um,
What's it
there's
about?
more of this onion, more of this onion to peel back.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I haven't done a children's book summary, but you'll be the first. I might not summarize it. I might actually just read it on the air. I've got two young children. I've got a 2-year-old boy and a 3-month-old baby girl. So I think I might get
Well,
into the
congratulations on your crew, and yeah, that it's. I got to tell you, I'm biased, but it's as cute as can be, and it will be a really nice compliment to
oh,
the THISday Thrivation family, and great for everybody to read.
yeah, perfect. I think there's a lot more books in you, Philip. I think you're going to be one of those. Who knows? But I reckon maybe a dozen. I think you've got a lot in you that needs to come out. So we'll get there in the end. But I appreciate you coming on the Best Book Bits podcast and just being so open and vulnerable as well. I know you do that with your books, but it's great to see the person behind the books too. For my audience that's listening, check out this man, follow him, buy his books, read his books, reread his books, and then buy multiple books for your friends and family. And one thing I forgot to ask, actually, if you buy this man's book and if you're in an area close to him, where are you residing at the moment, Philip? Whereabouts are you living?
I live in El Paso, Texas.
Great. And talk to me a little bit about your merchandise that you actually sell with this day. Hats, caps. What type of merchandise do you sell along with your books? I know you do
I
gift
think
packs.
one of the things about this day is that it's just and Thrivation. They're just cool ways to live a life. You don't need to know my books. All you need to know is that you have this day, and you can thrive. The act of thriving is Thrivation. So my merchandise, goes along with that. But I just take great pride in the complete package and the look of my books. I am a marketer. I wanted them to stand out, and then I wanted the experience of opening them as a book or a package in the mail is one that is appreciated and and remembered.
Perfect. Now I'm going to be selfish. Where can I buy the cups and the hats? Because I do want to remember this day. So Where can I go and buy them?
Dang, that's going to take a reorder. I use a Yeti, and I just got to put a sticker on mine because I haven't got my new Yetis in yet. So
That's okay. Well,
there's more
when
to
they're
come.
out, I'll
I'll
share it with
let you
my
know.
audience.
I'll
We'll
let
do.
you know.
Perfect. All right. I won't take up too much of your time. Philip, thanks for being on the show and being a great guest, but we'll catch up soon. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael.
No worries at all.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Bye.